get viscerally sick. I have seen myself get viscerally sick. I had all the same symptoms of COVID multiple times. I've gone through depression. I've been in multiple car accidents where I deliberately, like the egoic mind was like, oh yeah, let's go do this. And I'm like, I really shouldn't be doing this. And then I listen to it and I do it anyway. And bam, car accident. Happened 3 times. Same thing with a hamstring tear, with a breaking my toe, with breaking my kneecap. Like it's like universe is like, hello. And I'm just like, fuck you.
Like, what is this? Because this just shows up all the time, right? And I've had similar experiences where if I don't do a thing, like my money goes down to almost zero, and I'm forced to have a look at the thing that I'm ignoring, whether it's being of service or having a conversation with someone I've been running away from having a conversation with. And I think I've always labeled it as the universe coming at me. But I think that there's another thing that we could potentially, another name or an identity or something else that we can give it. That's part of our soul's journey, like our soul's path. That I think
Mhm.
when I pivot and stop being a victim about it and be like, hey, all right, I know I'm ignoring something. What is it? And you step into that place, like the whole thing shifts. Like Ariel, like what 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 would you give the name to that thing if there was anything?
Well, because everything I believe is divinely orchestrated, right? For sure. So it's like I had to go through that to get to that, to be able to see that, to be able to do it for myself, and then to be able. For me, I always think in my like when I'm in the depths of my despair, I'm like, well, I'm gonna be able to teach this to a client one day. I want
It's
to
a
kill myself
it's a
when I
powerful
get out of this. I've
and
been there. I've
yeah,
been there.
and that's a powerful pivot, right? When you can look
Mhm.
at the despair or whatever's there and go, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to use it as leverage to whatever the
Yep.
next thing is.
Yep. So I heard a podcast that I really agree with, and this is a controversy I actually got into with someone that I know is very esoteric as well. She's like, the only way that you can ever like go along the conscious evolutionary journey is by suffering. And I was like, why do you believe that? Like, I don't believe that. And I finally came across this podcast where this gentleman was talking. It's either suffering or grace. So it's like, which the majority of the public were hard ass motherfuckers with our egos. For like, yeah, no, I'm a masochist. Like, I really got to go through some massive pain. But there are some people who get there by grace. They
Yeah.
get there because they're curious. They observe, they see the nuance. They're like, there's something that's off. There's something, and I want to know more. Right. That was not my path.
Yeah, me either. And right now I'm reading Letting Go by David Hawkins, which was recommended
Such
to
a
me
good
by,
book.
I've never read it. And I'm like, I've tended to avoid all that spiritual esoteric stuff. And it usually just comes back and slaps me in the face at some point. And I'm
Yep.
reading it and I'm like, oh my God, this, because he speaks to the suffering and working really hard to get the thing is like this Protestant
Mhm.
derivative of Protestantism where you have to
Mhm.
suffer in order to get to where you want to go. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't need to suffer anymore. I don't need to like do the hard grind. I can actually enjoy my life and step
Enjoy
in.
my life. Well, that's also a very westernized indoctrination, right? Is that we have to hustle, we have to grind. And I love posts like that because I love jumping on them. Like, why do we have to hustle and grind? Like, why do we have to push ourselves? Like, is that really necessary? And then I get into all these esoteric and people like attack me and they're like, I'm like, well, you can look at my 5 to 6 figure, get like, or we can just say, and they're like, well, how do you do? I'm telling you, you're not listening.
Yeah. And that's the pivot that I'm at right now is I've done this grind feeling for a while and now I'm just ease. How can I do this easily? How can clients come to me with ease? How can I pre-qualify with ease? And my last two clients that signed up for me were just all easy. They came from referral. It was like a super short conversation. I just send them a
Yep,
link. Do you want to
yep.
work with me? Yes or no? I'm
Yes or
easy.
no? Yeah. But that's again, that even goes into like that kind of plays into what we were talking about too, which is like the masculine versus feminine energetics, right? The
Totally.
ease, yeah, there's the construct, and I believe that everything in life in this reality is duality, right? We have the contrast. And then people are like, oh, but there's only one. Yes, there's only one, but there's only one outside of this. So when we're within this game, we have to play within this game.
Yeah.
and we have to understand how to play our game in this game. And I believe that there is a balance of that, of construct and then ease and flow within this structure. And if you're hardlining it, that's very masculine structure, which there is a time and place for 100%. There's also the ease and the flow and the joy of it. And I believe that money's typically a little much more flow based. It's a
Yeah.
lot more flow based.
Totally, totally. And I've been diving into the anima and animus, masculine and
Mm,
feminine, and just the concepts of those two things. I've got a quote here from Robert Johnson, who did a lot of work on Jungian philosophy and psychology. So almost all of a man's sense of value, worth, safety, joy, contentment, belongingness, and happiness derive from his inner feminine nature.
interesting.
So like for me, when I was doing my full hustle and grind, I was
Mhm.
completely ignoring that inner part of me. And what am I enjoying my life? Can I connect to my partner? Can I connect to my son? Can I connect to life in general? So I would like back to back books, I'd back to back podcasts, I'd back to back
Mhm.
YouTube videos, trying to grind my way, understand intellectually what actually needs to happen. It wasn't until I had someone say, John, hold up, buddy. Go inside yourself. What are you not feeling? What are you
Mhm.
avoiding? Right. So, whether it was despair, hopelessness, this running in fear and scarcity that I'm not going to make my business work, or I'm not going to make my life work, I'm going to look like a failure or destitute. When I was creating from that place, it was I was wearing my body out, like my neck. Just
That was me. I mean, that was me when because I've been in the coaching industry. Just I was more in the physical in the beginning, but I mean, I used to literally have my life scheduled down to 15-minute increment for 6 years. And so I was very, I call it like hyper masculine recovering female. Like, and that's what we're indoctrinated to do if we're traumatized. And you know this is the majority of the women that you used to, but I know that was like your avatar for a while. So that's just that's what we're told is the way to be successful. But like, to what end? You're not enjoying any of it. Like I literally, yeah, I was able to make bills, but where was my life? Right. And we have to have both that middle path. Another book for you that I think you'll enjoy is Love Without Conditions, if
oh
you've not
yeah,
read it.
heard of it. Great. I'll check it out. Love without
It's only
condition.
about a Love Without Conditions, and it's about Jesus. It's a conglomeration of like downloads, and then the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then the Essene culture, and then the Christ consciousness, and then the actual history of Jesus. So it's like a beautiful meld of all of that by this author. And I really fell into that middle path over the last year, right? Because I do believe that, and our bodies are a physical representation of the middle path. What do I mean by that? You have the sympathetic, which is upregulation, hustle, grind, push, burn to the end to be able to survive. Then you have the down regulation, the parasympathetic,
Mm,
right? But you have to have the high and the low, and then the homeostatic balance in between
yes.
to be able to have a healthy body, right? We are a physical walking manifestation of the Western culture and the Eastern culture.
Amen. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
So it is the middle path, but we get so caught up in they're right, they're wrong. No, there's nuances of both that are true at different given points for each individual. It's using the soul and the heart to be able to guide when that is applicable.
Totally. And where do you see masculine and feminine play out in that dynamic?
With which portion specifically?
With that point, okay, which point? Great question. So when you're on the pendulum, like when you're swinging between the two, so
Mhm.
how do those two dynamics work with each other or against each other to find that middle path within the body?
So like a masculine is typically very hustle grind drive. That's very upregulated. We have to get this done. It's also like beta brainwave, like we're focused on one thing intentionally, and this has to get done here now. But we have to be able to come back down into that rest and digest, that feminine ease flow, just to be able to open the perception back up and really assess what's actually going on. And then, you know, as well as I do, we have to have structure, we have to have creativity. Then they have to work cohesively together, the yin and the yang, to be able to create the full picture of what we're actually wanting to create in life.
Mm, thank you. Did you watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
It's random. I saw a few episodes when I was younger. It's been a long time.
Yeah, great. The reason I mention it is it reminds me like a highly masculinized woman who's
Mhm.
out to like slay vampires, do
Vampires.
good. Yeah, right. But then when it comes to relationships, just can't seem to like
Mm.
pull it in. Like be able to be open hearted with her feminine nature. And like for a woman in that world, what I see is the animus. This is a quote from Carl Jung. The animus is the gatekeeper to the genuine spiritual life of a woman.
Mm.
Uh, she can seem so powerful and godlike that her conscious ego feels worthless and helpless by comparison. So when I see Buffy and women like that who are pushing and grinding, like they can feel so powerful. Their conscious egos, like I'm doing this thing, I'm creating this life, I'm
Mm.
stepping out in the world, and but then they're underneath all of that. There's this underlying sense of worthlessness and
Mm.
helplessness, which tends to show up in their relationships. And what I've found is by working in the masculine and feminine, there's two ways to approach the dynamics. One is you go in by yourself, and then the other one is in relationships where they're both naturally going to emerge. They're both naturally coming to the surface. And I think when you're talking about the body and the both modes, the sympathetic and the
Yep.
parasympathetic,
Yep.
like when someone can't be in their rest
And
state
digest.
and
Yep.
digest, they don't know how to be with enough space to identify
Mm.
what's actually going on in their body and in their relationships.
They're disconnected. They're not even in their bodies.
Yeah.
These women, many times, they're so up in the mental, and even men too. I mean, we've been have
And too.
traumatized men, but those men, they tend to be much more of that anger, atypical, because that's the only thing that men are socially accepted in being able to actually express as emotions. Which it's funny because you deal with women in that, and I typically deal with men who are repressing emotions, and they hustle ground drove themselves into addiction, full-fledged addictions and alcoholism and stuff like that. So, it actually all goes, when you think about it, really, to just healthy processing of emotions and memories.
Yeah.
Like, if you get to that, I mean, I hate the word shadow because it's so hyper sensationalized. It's just integration of everything. Like, it's that simple, guys.
I agree, and I love that you spoke about feelings. So I think the obsession with trying to think your way into feelings doesn't work. Like I think the more an individual, and through the work that I'm sure you've done as well, and the work that I've done, is when you learn how to feel well, like know how to like consciously be with your feelings, life is so much more easier, and you can connect to people deeper. There's not this um, awkward sense of the small talk piece. You just go straight in. Like it's depth. It's all depth because you're speaking from the soul place instead of speaking from that armoring of what do I need to say here? What's the
What do
thing?
I need
Like
to see
what's
here? Yep.
yeah.
Oh, the devil on, like, the devil that you can't, that you don't see is always worse than the devil that you actually see. Like, it's just like a horror movie, people. Like, it is really that simple. We're always freaked out by the monster that you can't see because you don't know what it's going to do. You have no idea the fullest capacity of its how it's going to threaten you. So, and we always, the mind, as you well know, the function of the mind is just to keep these thought loops going. Because if, oh, what is this going to happen? This is going to happen. This is going to hurt me. Blah 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 blah. Right. And as long as we listen to that and we follow the thought train stays alive on a neuroplasticity level. That neural pathway is continuing to be enforced because you are avoiding the very thing that you are afraid of, reinforcing that fight or flight mechanism, which keeps that story alive. It's only by penetrating the story and proving to your body that this is safe that we then disrupt it and show to your body and start to feel what's going on and create ease within the system, that story starts to be negated, and that's where we actually create full healing.
Mm, yes, yes, yes. And I think that what the words that kept popping out to me while you're speaking was, "Do I exist? Who am I beyond the thought
Yeah.
patterns?"
Who am I beyond the thought that, well, so many people, and that's the thing is that, like, it's amazing to me, it's less and less, but people still identify as their thoughts. Like, how can you be the very thing that you observe?
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I say that, they're like, well, but then I go to another level. I'm like, okay, so the words that you utter out of your mouth, are they you? And they're like, oh shit. So how are the thoughts any different? And then it's like that light bulb moment. Like, oh my God.
I love
So
that.
what am I? Right. And that is the question. Know thyself.
Yeah,
That's
no,
my next tattoo.
awesome. And what I also heard was that who are you when you're not there, or who are you when you're not you? Those what are they? There's a word for them anyway. A koan.
The
Like
thing.
the thing where it's like, well, it cancels out the thought process. The question cancels out the thought, and there's just this silence and this
Yep.
peace and this stillness, which I love. Like I love those moments, right? The faces on clients in particular or friends when you drop those things, and they're like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, I've been in this hamster wheel of thought my entire life, and it's brought me to you, and you've asked me this
Mhm.
question, and you've fragmented my entire reality in just the right way, so you can take me where you're going to take me."
Every thought is a ticket, right? And you can decide to take that ticket or you can decide to hang back and stay in the train station.
Mm,
It's that impulsivity that creates the reactivity, and that reactivity reinforces the thought loops, and then that gets the body involved, and then before you know, we have an entire nation, entire world of disconnected individuals who are indoctrinated to believe. I mean, to be fair, we're indoctrinated from a very early age, right?
agreed.
You are, yeah, you are this. You're bad for this. You're this. That is part of you. And so we're just like, our brains love to attach. Like, oh, cool. I'm phone, right? So because we're social creatures.
Yeah,
And society knows that, plays that game, right? Because it keeps the materialism going. It keeps us distracted from what we actually are. Because, in all honesty, society is terrified of who we actually are. Because if we actually decide to show up as we all were, we would overthrow society.
absolutely. And which reminds me of a Fight Club and Tyler Durden and
Mm,
the relationship of being disconnected from the feminine nature,
yep.
and the narrator disconnected from the feminine nature and just obsessed about buying the next thing,
Mm-hmm.
buying whatever the next table was or whatever it is, and then Tyler telling him like whatever you buy owns you, but then also not understanding the underlying mechanism of, well, who am I without the things that I buy? And then going through the full chaos portal of let's just destroy everything. Like, well, hey, maybe,
Some chaos is fun.
I'm
I've definitely burned shit in my day. Like, um, but yeah, it's a fun thing to play with too. I definitely do agree. Like having that nothing, going out in the middle of nowhere and having nothing
yeah,
for a few days. I mean, and believe it or not, I think I told you this. I've had a short stint of homelessness, and despite it being massively uncomfortable, it's also very, very peaceful because
mm,
then you have nothing to worry about except yourself, right? Um, and that's immensely free, immensely. And there is something to say with that, like essentialist movement that they're going through. This is very like trendy right now, but I totally agree with it. Like, if you don't need it, why is it here, right?
yeah,
And that
totally agree. Like on my phone, I've got an app which is just got the most essential things on the front screen.
love
Um,
it.
like, and then when you say about the homelessness, like for me, I've lived out of my car for a while, and just
Mhm.
like have that experience of like I'm gonna live in my swag, and all the sensations of like, are people judging me? Like, have I failed at some level? Like, if my old friends could see me now, kind of thing, that knew the money that I had before, the life I had before. And I think there's a real humbling when you get taken through these like lessons or journeys or life experience that you can embody and speak to in a way that inspires people to see that there's more to just the material, the vanity metrics.
It's true. And a peaceful thing too. I don't know if you get this a lot, but I get a lot of people come to me say they want peace. And I'm
Freedom,
like,
freedom
okay,
to me.
yeah,
Yeah,
freedom for you. Yeah. Peace comes a lot too. Cause well, they typically are like so hyper vigilant and so dysregulated. They're just like out of their mind. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's sit you down for an exercise. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, let's sit and breathe. And they're like, what? give them 3 minutes and they're sitting there and like, oh my God. Like it's that simple. It is that simple.
And I think like for you, Ariel, like being with someone who's like regulated in a way
Mhm.
that you can't, because you're, and what I've found, and you probably found this too, is that like my field expands into the other person as well. And so between my
100%.
thoughts and the pace, they know that they
Hmm.
have permission to slow down. And when I'm
Hmm.
tracking someone, like if I'm talking and I can see that they're starting to disassociate, they're holding their breath, and I can just say,
Hmm.
hey, where are you at right now? What's your
Where are you
body
at right now?
doing?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
oh, I'm holding my breath and I'm tensing. I'm actually tensing my pelvic floor. I actually made fists with my hands and I didn't even notice. And it's like, yeah, cool. Great. Take a deep breath and let that go. And let's continue. So I think in an exercise that you've done where people don't know how to breathe, I don't think parents or caregivers have shown them how to be in their body, right?
Well, and yeah, don't get me started on the education system. We're conditioned to distract. We're conditioned to chase the high. We're conditioned to chase the consumerism, the materialism. And I mean, these fucking things are dopamine drug addicts. And that desensitizes us even more. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out saying that like our brains are not up to developing at the rate that the technology has.
Correct.
And we wonder why we have skyrocketing amounts of ADHD, ADD, anxiety, and all these different things. And then don't get me started on comparison. But I mean, people are afraid of AI, but you should not be afraid of AI if you're being yourself, because this is never going to be replaceable. For
Correct.
people who actually do the work and are integrity and show up and are present and care, um, that's not something that can be recreated. You can't
Correct.
recreate the soul. The soul cannot be manufactured. The problem is the majority of people are so disconnected that they don't even know how to connect with the soul. And
Mm,
I think that that is going to be one of the biggest things in the next few years coming is true and real community, and then real and genuine connections. And that's going to be more valuable than anything else.
beautiful. That almost feels complete for me, Ariel.
And on that note,
I'm serious.
that's it. It's yeah, but it's true. It's
Yeah.
true because you know as well as I do, there's a whole bunch of things that are going to change very rapidly in one way or another. And at this point, integrity is it's your North Star.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah, part of me wants to try and pull in more topics, but that feels like the perfect note to land on. Like the final dun.
And
That's it.
yeah,
That's it. Does that work
I
for
love
you?
it. Yeah, it works for me. Can you send me a copy?
I
I'd
will.
love to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll hit the stop.